Meanwhile, you and I need to talk about something else because I'm fascinated, and we highlighted it there. We were talking to Nigel about it in terms of that tax list and understanding who is paying tax money to us. Well, rather than necessarily speculate on who's doing it, Lord Robert Hayward, Conservative pollster, Robert Watts, the compiler of the Sunday Times tax list, is joining me now. Robert, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Just explain to people what the tax list is and what it publishes.
Great to be here, James. Thanks for having me on. We look every year at the amount of personal tax that people are paying, and also the individuals whose businesses are contributing the most to the exchequer. It's an annual thing. We've been doing it. Why did we start doing it? We started because there was this public perception that the rich pay no tax. And a lot of wealthy people on the Sunday Times rich list were coming to us saying, well, hang on, I contribute huge sums to the exchequer each year. It's just not true. So we wanted to try and find out who was right. And we find this list is now as closely followed as the Sunday Times rich list. People want to see who's paying in and who might not be.
And you're absolutely right that I think people are fascinated by this, because there's one thing being rich and having assets, but if that isn't necessarily matched by, and I'm assuming that people do pore over the numbers to say, does the tax rich list sort of mirror the sort of wealth list? And are those who are exceptionally wealthy paying their, quote, fair share? I hate the use of the word fair when it comes to tax, but anyway, it is what it is. Who's at the top of the list, and are they paying a fair or perhaps not fair share in relation to their wealth?
Sir Chris Hohn tops the list for the first time. It's the first time we've had someone topping the tax list and our giving list as well, the philanthropy rankings that the Sunday Times produced. So, interesting guy, son of a Jamaican car mechanic, went to Southampton University, not a stellar academic career to start, then went into the city, set up his own hedge fund in 2003 and has done very, very, very well out of it. Quite an interesting guy. The strong social conscience. I think they're viewers who wouldn't necessarily back all the causes he's backed over the years. He gave £200,000 to Extinction Rebellion at one point. There was a very expensive divorce settlement, £337 million. People might remember for that. But the quiet thing about someone like him that often goes unnoticed, and for a lot of people on the Sunday Times tax list, is they're these quiet achievers. They're not terribly flash. They're not interested in a public profile and popping up on TV or giving newspaper interviews. They're just quietly running their businesses, providing goods and services that you and I want, employing a lot of people, and to the benefit of us all, contributing after tax.
Fascinating when you start looking at this, and there are some established names and not so established names. We very often hear the name Denise Coates, Britain's wealthiest self-made woman, co-launched Bet365. I mean, some people might bristle at the fact that betting makes so much money, but then on the other hand, £265 million into the tax coffers, that's quite significant. How many of these people would you say are at risk of leaving the country?
Oh, well, I mean, it's the big change. The first 5 years I was compiling this list, it was very much, we were in this sort of environment of record numbers of billionaires, that the UK was this magnet to the global super rich. That has changed. We've seen our number of billionaires on the Sunday Times rich list fall in the last couple of years. And those changes to non-dom status that Rachel Reeves now finally seems to be rowing back slightly from, that was the big change that really concerned these people, frightened these people. And these tax changes that you were talking to Nigel Farage about are similar, but I'd add a third to that list, and I've written a piece about it in today's Sunday Times about this change to business property relief. If you look up and down the tax list, you'll find a lot of these, as I was saying, these very quiet family businesses. Now, until now, it's been possible for those businesses to be passed from generation to generation without an inheritance tax bomb being laid. And in the October budget, Rachel Reeves announced this change. It's similar to the farmers, the charge being levied at farmers. that in future, such transactions over £1 million will be liable for a 20% charge. Now, the big concern that Sir James Dyson has raised, and others are starting to raise, is that this will be the death of many of these family businesses. So,
and isn't that a real key point, that we saw an attack probably in the 80s and 90s of partnerships. Legal partnerships used to be owned privately, and then you had to buy into the partnership, and then people sold out, and then that was a way of continuity. And then because of the tax changes that went in there, they all incorporated. We saw big pressure on building societies to incorporate, and huge numbers of family businesses up and down this country. Children, grandchildren no longer wanted to go into the family business because of the tax legacies that might arise. And that is a real problem if you want to build a business, that, as you say, family businesses almost eradicated from the scene. Nobody seems to be singing as to how important a family business is, and how difficult it is, perhaps as a youngster, to go into it.
Exactly, and I think the concern that people have, which you're alluding to, really is that these businesses will be sold off, that people won't want to inherit them, and perhaps they'll be bought by a private equity company that will ratchet the company full of debt, and if it's full of debt, then it won't pay less corporation tax. So there's a lot of anxiety about this. There's concern it will cost jobs. There's concern it will see the breakup of businesses, and you may get that one-off hit of an inheritance tax bill for 1 year. But the loss for year after year after year into the future from the death of some of these family firms is something that I expect to see a lot of concern and a lot more noise about in the coming weeks and months.
Do you ever get frustrated when you write about these things, that there seems to be a lack of either financial knowledge or understanding, particularly of tax system and matters financial in our country, and people seem to be financially illiterate, that they say, oh, the rich should pay more tax. But of course, we do have a tax system that is both progressive, and the more you earn, the more you pay. And there seems to be a sort of lack of understanding. Do you think that we need to have a better understanding in order to have a more informed debate, that when, for example, the Chancellor comes with changes, that if we actually had a better base understanding, we might be able to judge her changes and moves more effectively?
Well, there are a lot of people, aren't there, who are furious, I think, at sort of the lack of consultation with the changes to inheritance tax on farming land. And I think there is a similarity here with the tax on business property relief. I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think there is a bit of a disconnect, because we are a nation of shopkeepers. There is a quite admiration we see with both the tax list and the rich list for the people on this list. That, you know, go almost sort of, go on, my son, well done. You've created a business. You deserve to enjoy the benefits of that. And then when it comes to the tax bill, people feel, on the one hand, often we look, I think, through two ends of a telescope. A lot of us will be staggered that there are 15 people on the tax list this year who contributed more than £100 million to the public finances each year. You know, that's not the sort of sum that pays for a nurse's salary. That's the sort of sum that builds a hospital. But there are other people out there who look at it through the other end of the telescope, and they constantly wonder, well, yeah, I mean, it's £10.5 million that everyone on the tax list contributed this year, but could they have paid more? And people view it differently, don't they?
Well, they certainly do, and we've had quite a lot of questions from people asking, well, how many people get relief, and how many people have handed things over, and then what benefits will other people get? And look, we all know, look, just looking at my tax return, it's pretty complicated, and that's just me, compared to some of these huge astronomical figures, which is definitely not me. Sadly, I have no chance anytime soon of reaching your list, Robert, but it's a fascinating read. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. That's Robert Watts. He has investigated double-page spread in today's Sunday Times. Do have a read. It's fascinating.